Would you like to have a shortcut for experiencing really great teamwork? To know what you can count on other people for and what they can count on you for? Stay tuned to hear why profiles are the answer. Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Team Success. Today, I want to talk about why I have such a strong love affair going with profiles and assessments. Why is that? And I thought I would do a little bit of thinking about this particular question because it comes up in a lot of my conversations, if not all of them. It's definitely one of the bedrocks of my coaching. I want people to understand themselves. I want them to understand other people. And profiles for me are just a really accurate and fast way to get to the heart of it. But that's not really enough. Why else do I love profiles? And I realized in a conversation with someone just this week that it's because it builds trust. I know what I can count on from people. I know what I can count on them to do. I know what they care about. I know how to look after them. I know how to meet their most essential motivational needs. All of the things. It just gives me a roadmap for how to take really good care of them in our teamwork relationship and also what I can count on them for over the long term. So it's kind of this really amazing shortcut that builds trust. And trust is tough. I don't know about you, but in our organization, we move fast. There's not a lot of time sometimes to spend hours, evenings, weekends, getting to know someone personally. And I happen to want to work with people who are not only great at what they do, but that enjoy what they do. And so I want to know what motivates them. I want to know what they care about. I want to know how they naturally strive. I want to know where in a process they get the most joy from. And so those are all of my success criteria for really great teamwork. And I don't know how else to get it as quickly as through profiles and assessments. So that really is the why of why I'm so in love with profiles. And I say in love in quotes. It's why I find them so darn useful, to be perfectly honest. The other thing is I have done a lot of profiles and I do not recommend all of them. So I curate the ones that I think are the most useful. And I will tell you them now and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the first ones I do and then the ones I do after and then which ones we use in our hiring. There's all sorts of different ways to use profiles. But before I do that, I want to tell you this is not about boxing people in. It's not that I stop being curious about that human after I know how they're kind of put together. It just gives me great questions. It means I can ask, hey, peace and harmony is something that motivates you. Tell me, how does this show up in your life? What are you like in conflicted situations? What do you feel like you bring to teamwork? What's really important to you? Then we can have a great conversation that is actually meaningful to somebody else. It helps me get out of my head because I know how I'm put together. I'm not clueless about that, thank goodness. And it helps me make that bridge to another person. I am always looking for ways to connect. And this gives me, as I said, a really accurate shortcut. I love shortcuts. Some people don't. It's also a long cut too. There's so much information in each of the profiles I'm going to talk about that you could spend a day or two on each person. But once you know the stuff, you don't have to. And then you can do your own inquiry. So it's not about boxing people in. It's not about confining them to only ever being this. Human beings are incredibly complex. And none of these profiles take into account life experience. So how it shows up and how it's shaped by every single person is unique and different. And I'm curious about that. It may be that I have individualization as a Clifton Strength. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. But I want a few of the puzzle pieces clearer to me about how I can help to see the whole beauty of this particular person. So just want to make sure you're clear that it's not about boxing people in or using it to. There's one person in particular that just says, oh, well, you're this. That must mean blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, ooh, I cringe because it's like, ooh, they're way more than that. And there's other dimensions of that profile you're not talking about. So you're missing out on stuff. So it's really important to take the entirety of the information you do have and then, of course, expand and build on it in your relationship and your communication with that person. So just so that point is made. All right. So in terms of building trust, what do I mean by that? Well, let me go into some of the very specific profiles. First one always for me is Colby, KOLBE.com. Go do your Colby A profile if you haven't already. And just appreciate that this measures something that No other profile does. It is the only one in the world that does this. And they've contested it successfully for people who've tried to steal it. Don't do that. So it is the only accurate profile that measures conation, that measures your conative mental energy for how you strive, how your problem solving plays out. And it is incredibly accurate. It's reliable. It's gone through all the testing. I got certified in 1995. So been immersed in this for a very long time, and I'm still learning things, which is really fun. I just find it so incredibly useful because I strive in a very particular way. If you're familiar with your Colby MO, modus operandi, I'm a 3 fact finder, 2 follow through, 9 quick start, 5 implementer. So that means I am all ideas, all new stuff all the time. If it's new and different, it's automatically better in my world. And then I'm somewhat hands-on. So physical quality is important to me. I tend to communicate in tangible, concrete ways, which I find to be a massive advantage, by the way. And then I have some interesting hobbies, like I like to bake. And then a couple summers ago, when I decided I did not like the dead limbs on my trees at our vacation property, I bought myself a fabulous battery-operated chainsaw and got to work. So now I've got a chainsaw, 16-inch bar, a pole saw, a little baby limb trimmer, all the things, much easier than the other manual ones I was using before. You know, it's a somewhat risky for most people activity, but it uses up my 9 quick start and it uses my 5 implementer, which I don't use as much at work. And I just try to make sure I'm cutting the tree limbs and not my own. So that's where my 5 implementer plays out, as well as I said, physical quality. But I work with a lot of people who are the complete and total opposite of me. They've got lots of mental energy for doing deep dives and research, which is the fact finding. They're wonderfully, beautifully talented at organizing chaos. And I'm the chaos, in case you're wondering. So it's wonderful. So we can really complement each other, but we can't do that if I'm expecting other people to be like me. If I'm not aware of how I strive and where that's a contribution and where that's not. What situations really benefit from my 3295 Kolbe MO and which situations I just need to stay far, far away from because I will mess them up. It just adds so much. It's like a tapestry, and all of a sudden you can see all the colors from black and white. That's why I love Colby. So how people strive is so critical because guess what? We are working together. Working together, it means we are striving. So why wouldn't I want to know how that is? So I know if I'm working with my brilliant support partner, who's a 6733, that I know that she's going to organize. She just will, you know, and if she's not organizing me, she's going to be organizing something or someone else. All good. And I'm just delighted and honored that she will contribute her talent to making my life, our life better. So we are complete opposites. We shouldn't work as well together as we do, but it's fabulous because I don't get in her lane and she doesn't get in mine. So it works really, really well. I get compliments for how easy it is to work with me and how well structured and how count onable I am. Well, I can take no credit for that. It's all because of Katrina. She makes me look like a flippin' rock star because I put myself in her very capable hands and she orchestrates everything. You know, our podcasts, one of the best run in our entire company. We have like 11 other things that we're doing, events that we're doing. Again, I look really good because I've got Katrina orchestrating everything before and after me to make sure that I can show up the best way that I can. And she's happy doing that. And she would not be happy with what I'm doing, even right now. And the same is true. My friend Nicole, who was supporting me before Katrina, she was like, I schedule to calm down. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I'm doing scheduling, I'm getting anxious. So it just really allows me to appreciate other people's talents and contribution. Now, the second profile that I do if I'm starting to work with a team, and this is a newer one, is Working Genius. So Working Genius is awesome. I've said it before, I'll say it again, which might sound a little arrogant, but I'm almost jealous. I'm like, why didn't I come up with this? Now, I'm not Patrick Lencioni. I'm not part of the table group, but I love their approach to teamwork. I think they all have brilliant insights. And the Working Genius has put together some missing pieces for me. And it really talks about in the 6 stages of any kind of creative project or process, there are, again, 6 letters as they call it. There's wonder, 30,000 feet, big questions, invention, coming up with solutions to those big questions, discernment, so WID for discernment, which is which of those ideas make sense, is plausible, is feasible, profitable, all the things, which ones are going to work. And then galvanizing, let's get people motivated. Let's get them charged up to actually take action on this amazing idea. And then enablement, what support do people need to help get it done? And we started at 30,000 feet and we went down to 25, 20, 15, enablements around the 10,000 foot level. And then finally tenacity, getting this sucker across the finish line is my definition. And this is 5,000 to 0 feet. So really interesting to know where in that process do you want to play? Where do you want to hang out? Because that tells me where you are going to strive. And this was illuminated by a friend of mine who is also a coach and also very knowledgeable about profiles. And he was kind of confused because he's like, oh my God, these two people are both initiating quick starts. So they have lots of mental energy for new stuff, but they have no new ideas about the business. And I said, well, what's their working genius? Well, both of them were lower down on the process. They were in the enablement realm. They were a little bit in the galvanizing. One was in tenacity. I'm like, yeah, all of their ideas, all of their new, quick start ideas are about how to galvanize, enable, and get things finished. I said, they're not in that beginning invention part. So not all 9 quick starts have an eye in working genius. This is an insight, right? And it's like, oh, okay. So it tells me where in a process someone wants to strive. So that's how working genius and Colby. And if I'm going to do a quick insight into a team, I'm going to start with those 2 profiles. Now, I also very, very, very quickly want to know what is important to that person from a heart and motivation perspective. I want to know, do they have a lot of relationship strengths? Clifton Strengths is brilliant and it's great. And most of these profiles are so easy and inexpensive to do. So Colby, I think is $55 US, which is great. Doesn't take long, 20, 25 minutes tops. Don't overthink it. Working Genius, $25, 10 minutes. How cool is that? This is at the time of recording. Clifton Strengths, again, around the 50s, maybe even more. 59, I think. Anyway, it's awesome. And again, doesn't take super long. There's a timed part of it. So you have to choose before you get on to the next question. Clifton Strengths is powerful because it takes 34 different strengths and puts it into 4 different themes. It will tell you your top 5. If you are doing the profile or you haven't done it before, or even if you did your top 5, by the way, it used to be called Strengths Finder, now Clifton Strengths, get all 34. Because it's rank ordered and you want to know your top 5. You want to know the next 5 to 7. Your top 5 is the hand you've been dealt. Okay. Your next 5 to 7, the ones you can kind of pull from the deck. The bottom 5, where you will never go. When I saw that, I think 6 of the 9 executing strengths are in my bottom 10. It was like, ooh, this is the clue. To get stuff done, I need to surround myself with people with some executing strengths, which is true. I have done this. Because I have a ranger, thank goodness, helps me compensate for my 2 and follow through because I can and do arrange. Just saying, that's my only executing strength, in my top 5 and I think also in my top 10. So it's just good to know that about myself. I don't expect myself to be a fabulous person executing. I'm not trying to make myself better. I'm simply trying to maximize the strengths that I have and grow them. I thought it was funny. You'll probably laugh too. I was shocked when I first did this, and this is like 2012, I have maximizer number 1 and strategic number 2. And I read the definition of strategic and I was like, really? I have strategic? Which is like finding the best way through all the things. And then I looked up, actually, I think I looked at my business card and went, oh, Shannon, you're working with a company called Strategic Coach. This was a duh moment, just saying. But I leaned into that strength. I had never articulated it that way before. I had never actually identified that as something that I was great at. And I leaned into it. And it turned out I'm really, really good. That is a little factory installed for which I'm incredibly grateful. Other strengths, not so much. But that has been incredibly powerful for me. So Colby is amazingly validating. Again, Working Genius tells you where in the process you want to hang out. I'm invention discernment. And then Clifton Strengths tells me, here's what you can expand. This is how you can be great at who you are. A couple other ones, DISC. I'm also certified in DISC, which I'm, again, grateful for. I use it a little bit less now, but it tells you whether or not your people are task focused and how outgoing or reserved you are relative to those things. So you can be D, dominant doer is another one. I, influencing, inspiring. So first one is outgoing and task focused. That's dominant doer. And there's lots of other adjectives, by the way. I is above the line in the top half of the circle. So this is outgoing and people focused. This is inspiring. It's not necessarily innovating, but it's really galvanizing people to action in some ways, providing inspiration. Then you've got below on the line on people, and that is steadfast and people focused. This is steadfast, very generous people overall. They just tend to be very caring, kind of like enablement on the working genius. And then finally C, which is reserved and task focused. And these people are very conscientious, very careful, and make sure that stuff gets done, right? So again, much more on that personality side, as is working genius. You'll see some connections, and it's really fun. So I know that I'm DI. With other people, I'm ID. I try and persuade you, and if I can, I'm just going to tell you, is how that plays out. But it's allowed me in my fast-paced way to appreciate people who are even-paced. That's one of the gifts that DISC gave me. It also tells you kind of how you show up when you get triggered. So there's some great information that I've learned about that. Personality Insights is the company I'm certified through, and they have some great resources if you feel like doing a deeper dive. The other one I want to talk about is PRINT, and I just got a refresher on this week by the brilliant Adrienne Duffy and Deborah Levine. It's called the Paul Hertz Group. There's a very special arrangement through Coach, which because you are listening to this, you also have access to. So we'll give you a special print code, which allows you access to print at a very strong discount. Also provides some additional training for you. At the beginning, there's a 1-hour webinar, which is essential to watch. Do not skip that step, which is kind of cool. So that's something you get, as a listener to this podcast, you can have access to this. And print is amazing. It talks about what is your motivational identity? What is below the waterline? If you think of an iceberg analogy, what is below the line in terms of your deepest, I'm going to say, emotional motivators? What do you need from your heart, from your soul to be happy? When those needs are getting met, you're going to show up in best self. When your needs are not being met, you are going to get triggered and show up in your shadow self, which is your best self traits taken to an extreme. And this is true. So for example, on my print, there are 9, by the way. So I'm enjoy life and be happy and strong and self-reliant. Let's take my 8. If I get triggered and someone tries to tell me what to do, I kind of get immediately violent and want to throat punch them. I've used those words, never actually done it, but there are some triggers for me. Other people are like, oh, that's not a big deal. People think that everyone's triggers are the same. Just read someone else's profile. They are not. And it's interesting, like there are certain things that trigger me. People who are really downers and talk forever about problems that cannot be solved, kill me now, right? You can tell the violence comes in here. If I want to poke sharp sticks in my eyes is another expression I use. Yes, somewhat dramatic, I'll admit. But print is amazing. It gives you your motivational identity, and the profile is called the Why of You. And there's a trigger report. Page 8 is one I laugh out loud at because it's like they knew me. It's like they peeled back 80 layers of the onion and they went, oh yeah, Shannon, this is what really ticks you off. This is what drives you around the bend. I'm like, yep, every single one. Someone asked me to narrow it down and pick 2 or 3. I'm like, I can't. I've highlighted all 10 of them. And I laughed out loud because it's as though someone just knew me. It was hysterical. So I find that super helpful. They also have your best self. They have your shadow self. They have your triggers, and they have role alignment. We talked about that in using it in hiring to see whether or not who the person's working with, the way the job is designed, the way the role is designed, will it actually meet this person's deepest motivational needs? And my dear support partner, Katrina, told me something that was a huge gift. She goes, on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being bad, needs not met, 4 being met, she scored a 4 in everything. And I was like, I was so happy. Right? Now, that's a more expensive profile, requires having a relationship because it talks about shadow self. Don't want to get anyone walking away triggered or feeling bad about themselves from this. So that's why there needs to be a relationship there with us, but really powerful to know those things. But again, if you want to do a quick teamwork check-in or, what's needed, Colby and Working Genius are fabulous. And then doing that really deeper dive about what motivates someone. What do they care about? Clifton Strengths, Print, and DISC are just phenomenal. So those are my go-tos. And by the way, I've done probably 30 maybe more profiles in my life, and these are the top 5. So other ones are good, they're interesting, they can be useful, they can be insightful, but in terms of ease of use and understanding and how they put the different pieces together around someone, absolutely brilliant. So in terms of the realm that we're talking about, these two different profiles. Kolbe measures how you strive. And then the other profiles all measure to some degree different, above or below the waterline, how you feel about something, your preferences, your motivation. What I haven't talked about is intellect. And we have been using the Wonderlic profile. They've changed it so it's less of a cognitive profile and more a bunch of other things. I wish they would keep it simple. It used to be I think 10 or 12 minute timed test that was paper and pencil. It's not that anymore. But finding a cognitive profile is also super, super helpful. And there are some great profiles that combine the personality and the cognitive. Nothing else touches Colby, just to let you know. So there are some great resources out there, and some that are very specialized for sales, some that are very specialized for leadership. Highly recommend using those two. I'm not going to recommend them because they may or not be as relevant. I don't know them as well, but they are incredibly useful, especially when you've got something like a salesperson or a leader that you're hiring for. Do that deeper dive in the more expensive profiles, because that can save you a lot of time and a lot of money. So that's kind of a deep dive into the profiles. I had a fabulous conversation with Amy Brusky, actually, from Colby. I'll link that podcast and this one, when we talked about all the profiles. We talked about how they work, the motivation behind them, all the things. So I think that's another conversation that you would like to. So what's the action that you can take after this conversation? Well, I'm hoping that you have gotten intrigued enough and that you're confident enough in your own, knowing yourself well enough. By the way, start with you. If you haven't done the profiles, do the profiles. You will learn a lot. And then share them with your family and friends. They'll go, oh yeah, that's you. And you're like, ooh, I didn't know I was so obvious. Truthfully, we really are. But it gives common language. This is what is so brilliant about all the profiles. We can talk about these things. Could I tell you that I was maximizer, strategic, individualization, arranger, and relator before I did Clifton Strengths? Nope. But I know what they mean and how they work, and I can demonstrate and show you in my past examples of all those things. So profiles give common language. And as going back to my point at the beginning, it builds trust. I want people to be able to trust me and know what they can count on me for, and nothing else, by the way. I don't want to be counted on to do something I am not put together to do. That is a recipe for failure for both of us, not a direction I want to go in. So I want people to trust me. I want to be able to trust other people, and I want to be in teamwork as quickly as possible. And so the profiles are just this, again, amazingly efficient and fast and accurate way of doing this. So I just want you to really appreciate a resource that you have available to you. Do they describe the whole human? Heck no. Of course not. We're very complex people, but it certainly gives you an insight into that. The last point I want to leave you with is an insight I've had. You may have heard me say it before, and that is that I trust people. And I want to share with you something that you may have heard me say before. And that is an insight. It's kind of like my only personal law or rule. And that is, I realize that I only trust people to the degree that I think that they know themselves. If someone does not know themselves well, it's not that I distrust them. It's just that I don't know what I can count on them for, because they're clueless about that. They can't tell me. When someone comes in, and this has happened, to an interview and said, oh yeah, I do all the profiles. Here's who I am. Here's what you can count on me for. Here's what not to count on me for. I'm like, I lean in. I'm like, oh, you are my person. Tell me more. I am so thrilled when people have had the awareness. They're alert, curious, responsive, and resourceful about who they are and what they bring to the party. They're not just showing up going, hey, I'm here. I don't know what I'm good for, but it's probably something. Let's find out. I'm like, I've got a higher threshold than that. Thank you very much. So encourage people coming into you to bring their information about themselves. Do they know themselves? Have they been curious? I like people who are curious. So there's just so much around this that when people come in knowing themselves, I know exactly what I can count on them for. And this also works in kind of in reverse too. If someone says, like in a relationship, I'm not good for you, please believe them. They know themselves to know that that's true. We tend to go, oh no, I'm sure you're fine. They've just told you that they're not, right? So pay attention. This is a worthwhile thing to know. People who know themselves, you can count on what they will do, or in this case, not do. And I want you to be that person, and I want you to know yourself. I want you to be able to put yourself out there for what people can count on you for great teamwork with. And then, so share. This is an equal conversation. And then find out about other people. It is just such a strong platform for teamwork. I cannot imagine not having this information, because I want to be able to move fast and move well, and profiles are my foundation for doing that. All right. Enough said. Any questions or comments, please let me know at questions@strategiccoach.com. I'm super excited about your ability to take this probably capability you already have and take it to the next level. So please let me know. And as always, here's to your team success.